Okay, so this past weekend, I was on Jubilee Media's The Middle Ground show with 4 porn performers, 2 people from the NoFap community, and an ex backup porn performer who is now a no porn masturbation guy.
So if I don't watch porn once a month, I'm going to be happier.
Probably.
I totally
agree with that.
statement.
Your brain will start working in a more optimal mode, and you'll be like, then there's me, Dr. Trish Leigh, cognitive neuroscientist and author of best-selling porn addiction recovery book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. I have the book here. I have it bookmarked so I can share some things with you. This book is a porn addiction resource to recover, and basically it springboards off of Gary Wilson's flagship work in Your Brain on Porn. This book takes it to the next level where now you can access a porn addiction recovery resource. Okay, so that's the cast. Now let's break down the first prompt. The first prompt was, I was addicted to porn.
I've suffered from porn addiction. Will the agreeers please step forward?
So I did not step forward for that prompt because I have not been addicted to porn. So if you read my book, Mind Over Explicit Matter, you will know that the way that I got into porn addiction recovery is because someone that I care about struggled with porn addiction, and I didn't know it until I did. That's how it works. So he didn't even figure it out. His wife made him come to me and tell me, or she was leaving. Healthy boundary, right? And so when I figured that out, if you've met me, you know I couldn't let it go. I had to dive into all the science, and I already had a wide, vast, varied educational background. I already had PhD training in 2 areas. I was poised to take everything I knew and just laser focus it on porn addiction recovery. So once I looked in a little, because I had never even thought about porn before, once I looked in a little, I realized it's highly addictive. It's at the core of the physical and mental health issues that people are struggling with currently, namely anxiety, depression, porn-induced ADHD. So many people go and they get a diagnosis of adult onset ADHD, which is not a thing. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Erectile dysfunction and sexual arousal dysfunction, what I call SAD. And then, of course, there's a 50% increase in heated breakups and divorce. This is the issue, porn addiction, that is splitting relationships. Now, the problem is that a person who is addicted to porn doesn't know they're addicted. They know they use porn. Most porn users do not consider themselves to be addicted to porn. This is the biggest takeaway I have from my journey, is that looking at the situation from 1 degree out and being able to have eyes on the whole thing with high levels of self-awareness of what I have going on myself and what they had going on, this couple, Sam and Chrissy, that 1% off perspective allowed me to be able to apply all my education and my personal transformation experience to their situation. And it's a unique perspective. I was the only person in the cast with that perspective. Never have struggled with porn addiction or masturbation compulsion, but being able to see the entire thing unfold into the downward spiral and then thankfully come back up in a massive upward positive spiral for this couple. So that was my unique perspective. Now, one thing I really loved is that the first prompt was, I have been addicted to porn, and nobody questioned if porn was addictive or not. Really interesting, right? Because in some other casts, there might have been a lengthy discussion about if porn is addictive at all or not, if that's real. So in my book, there is a lot of science that shows porn is highly addictive. It hijacks the dopamine reward system and pathways in a person's brain. It makes the person dependent on high levels of dopamine that are linked to sexuality. And that's why I refer to it as hypersexuality. But that hypersexuality links the person to themselves through masturbation and to a distorted form of intimacy with strangers who are performing. And in this interview, the performers all say it's a performance, that's not actual sex. They have partners and they have sex with their actual partners, but porn that they perform is artificial. Now, that artificial performance is known as a supernormal stimulus. It dumps very high levels of dopamine into the brain and the nervous system. I always call it a level 15 or a level 20. Healthy dopamine only exists on a continuum in a natural way from 0 to 10. And in the interview, I likened a 10 as skydiving. In real life, probably the highest normal stimulus is like
skydiving.
You're getting the most adrenaline rush and you're also getting the most pleasure in your brain. I call that the friction point. Anxiety, pleasure, hitting that sweet spot, and a person is very excited and they feel alive with pleasure. But that's a 10. And a healthy sexual experience with a partner who wants to be with you, that's like an 8 or 9. And they call it the happiness trifecta. It's more rounded out. It's dopamine at lower levels, 8 or 9, not 20. And it's also oxytocin for connection to that person, and serotonin. The serotonin is for joy and happiness. You should be having fun with another person in a sexual experience. So we identified that porn is not an experience. It is someone consuming other people artificially. It's a consumption, not an experience. We all agreed on that, which I thought was cool. And at the end of this series, I'm going to talk about where's the middle ground? What do we get to? So that was number one. So back to my perspective, it is one of understanding underlying neurological dysregulation that happens when a person becomes addicted to porn. I have seen over 1,000 brains. It's probably much more than that. I've never added it up in qEEG brain maps. And I've recently conducted a study that shows with statistical significance, this brain pattern that I have seen is the brain pattern behind porn addiction and porn induced erectile dysfunction. This is real. Now, my study is not the only one. There's many studies, and there's kind of older studies now. They're 10 years old, but foundational studies that show that the structure and the function of the brain is changed. And one researcher characterizes it as an underdeveloped brain. And I explained this on the show, and I don't know what will be cut and what won't, but I described the brain developing over time as developing until 28. And if a person finds porn when they're 10, then now their brain never gets to fully develop in a healthy way. Instead, it develops in a dysregulated way. This is the neurological dysregulation at the core of porn addiction. Your brain changes. Now it needs lots of dopamine, and it's been taught to get the dopamine from sexual behavior from the screen and masturbation, not other people. And we can visit the other people thing in a minute. But that neurological dysregulation, it leads to emotional dysregulation, which means now you have mood swings, you feel anxious, you have something that I call strained brain. It's a wired and tired brain pattern. You feel stressed out and anxious, but overwhelmed and exhausted all at the same time. This is part of autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and it leads people back to porn. But in a cruel joke of artificial supernormal stimuli, porn also causes this pattern. It keeps you stuck in the loop, the proverbial downward spiral. Now, I always joke there is no such thing as a horizontal spiral, because we know through tolerance building and escalation, if you continue to consume porn, you need more dopamine. You get it in more intense scenes, violence, which we talked about on the show.
Science now shows that porn is how most kids are learning about sex, and it's hypersexualized. And we know there's an increase in violence. And so now we have young people, punching, choking, anal sex is up. And we have young people now learning that this is healthy.
Sex is violent.
Well, it can be, but the violent piece of porn isn't just anal sex, but it covers kind of this, again, continuum overarching.
So, or extreme scenarios that don't exist in the real world, except for people with harems, right? And I made that kind of historical distinction in the show. So there's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. People are in a downward spiral of porn addiction because it affects their mental health in these ways. It also affects their physical health, erectile dysfunction, sexual arousal dysfunction on a significant rise. Science shows it. It's in my book. We broke this down. It is affecting social relationships. We're going to get to that in a prompt, and it affects your spirituality. We'll get there too. But I've seen 1,000 brains, so my perspective in the conversation was very different from the other people there who only know their own experience. I've seen 1,000 brains, plus I've worked with 1,000 people who own those brains. I've helped millions more on my YouTube channel. And if you go there, you can see in the comments, the struggle is real. I know the depths that a porn habit can take people to. And that is why I'm here. That's why I volunteered to go to Los Angeles by myself, paid for it myself, because I care. I want people who don't understand the devastation that porn can have in their life to understand it's real. But I love the fact that porn addiction was never ever contemplated in that discussion. So, going back to my self awareness, that is part of what is called emotional intelligence. It has 4 pillars, again discussed in Mind Over Explicit Matter. But the 4 pillars are self awareness, emotional regulation, self regulation. So, your ability to control your emotions and your body, which is lacking in porn addiction. That's what leads a person back to porn because they can't regulate. They feel stressed out. They're used to using porn to feel better from that dopamine dump. And that's the lack of emotional regulation, which then leads to lower social awareness. This is why relationships get destroyed. And also social relationship management. These are the 4 pillars. They break down when porn's in the mix. We know this scientifically. So I had the perspective of very healthy emotional intelligence from a very healthy, regulated brain when I helped my friend. I would contend that at some point in time, the other people in the room were or are using a dysregulated brain pattern. And I actually spoke up against one of my cronies on the NoFap team because he said, I go to church and I pray. My brain would be the green zone compared to the porn performers. And I'm like, nah, not really. It doesn't totally work that way. You can have a brain on fire. You can have strained brain even if you go to church and pray. And church leaders and I are on the same page with this. I'm not saying don't go to church and pray. Totally go to church and pray. I go to church and pray. But I also train my brain using neuroscience and advanced technology. I also enhance my mind through reading positive psychological books. I hang out with people who are grounded and striving and content and peaceful and filled with love. I have kept toxic people at bay. I have created my own life for myself. I am always working on my body and embodiment coming out of my head. I work out every day. I take walks in nature every day. I enhance my social relationships by being connected to people. And spirituality is very important to me. These are the 5 prongs of the comprehensive approach to porn addiction recovery: your brain, your mind, your body, your social relationships, and spirituality. Divinity is very important. We talk about all of this, but you can't just go to church and have a green brain because that's only 1 prong of the 5. So just to be clear, that we broke that down. An interesting takeaway from this prompt, I've been addicted to porn, is that education, inspiration, and empowerment are super important. And that's why I'm here, because in the context of porn addiction recovery, I was able to maintain all 3 of those things. I was highly educated and I made myself even more educated very specifically about the impact of porn. I was completely inspired to help my friends because I saw their lives being destroyed and disintegrating in front of my very eyes. And I literally could not even stop. I couldn't stop. And one might call that a compulsion, but I had to figure it out so I could help them. So I was able to maintain that inspiration and empower them. So on the set, I wanted to empower the people around me. There's times I wanted to say something else and I didn't. It's because I wanted to keep it at educating, inspiring, and empowering. So it's 5 prongs. And if you don't think you have a porn problem, stay with me because you might find out that you do. So in the discussion, we talked about the one porn performer, the female porn performer. She said, your idea of healthy sex might not be my idea of healthy sex. There's actually a definition of healthy sex. That's why I said healthy sex isn't an opinion, it's a definition. We had a discussion on 2 people watching porn together. That disrupts the relational piece.
Just
I
because we
just
want to
disagree
spice
with
it up
that.
a little, we just want to watch other
Yeah, because
people have sex.
it's still objectification. Like if you're watching other people have sex, you are no longer having a sexual experience in and of itself. Like it takes you out of the present and it puts you into fantasy. Fantasy is hypersexualized, which means in your experience with your partner, you're looking for level 15 dopamine instead of the happiness trifecta. The nature of healthy versus addictive sexuality, it's not an opinion. It's not what I think's good and what another person thinks good. It's a definition, healthy versus not. And the middle ground uses versus in the title, which I love. And I thought of this because it's NoFap versus porn performers. But to me, it's really about healthy sexuality versus unhealthy sexuality. And hopefully you'll be able to see that with me. Now, before we wrap up this prompt that I was not addicted to porn, but I know all about it, let me read you some of the symptoms
And what happens is what porn is directly linked to, and why I contend people should leave porn behind. There's an increase in sexual dysfunction in men and women. There's a significant rise in erectile dysfunction among young men. Young men have ED, they can't be with a partner. If you can't be with a partner, you know what that leads you to, right? More porn and masturbation for that level 20 dopamine, higher impulsivity, emotional dysregulation, cognitive rigidity, poorer judgment. The frontal lobe is no longer working because it's part of that reward pathway, and you cannot make the decisions you would have made with a healthy brain. Difficulty controlling sexual cravings, regardless of the situation, excessive preoccupation with sex, think about sex all the time, objectification of others leading to increased sexual coercion and abuse. Porn is linked to this. Scientifically proven. The scientific studies are in the book. Committing acts of sexual promiscuity, deviance, and violence. Low self esteem, loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Less interest in sex with one's partner. Increase in anal sex, which has negative effects on relationship well being. Decreased body self image and being more critical of a partner's body. Challenges building intimacy, causing relationship harm. Greater risk of cheating on your partner, and more than twice the occurrence of heated breakups and divorce than people who do not use porn. So, these are the effects of porn use. We're going to come back to them. Wrapping up this section, I was not addicted to porn, but I was interwoven with really close friends of mine who had to walk this journey. Their story is in my book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. It's a story of Sam and Chrissy who have made it through the woods. And since then, I've helped many, many couples make their way into the woods, make their way out of the woods, and reconnect for healthy intimacy. Now, follow me through to the next video because the next prompt is masturbation has many healthy benefits. Do you think I agreed or disagreed? Well, no spoiler alerts. Follow me through to the next section and I'll see you there. Let's break it down.